What people fail to mention often is that a reason why Northerners favored keeping slavery where it was at, not outright abolishing it, was because they profited off of it and didn't want to lose jobs to it.
That's a valid point. The North had a complex relationship with slavery. While many Northerners were morally opposed to slavery, the Northern economy was deeply intertwined with the Southern slave economy through industries such as shipping, banking, and insurance. The North also relied on Southern cotton to fuel its textile industry. As a result, many Northerners were hesitant to abolish slavery outright, as it would have had significant economic consequences. Instead, many Northerners favored limiting the expansion of slavery in new territories while allowing it to continue where it already existed. This compromise approach was reflected in the Missouri Compromise of 1820, the Compromise of 1850, and the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854.
Slavery to both Northerners and Southerners had to do with political power. Southerners believed if they were allowed to make more slave states in the territories, that would give them more political power.
Yes, that's correct. The issue of slavery was intertwined with political power and representation in Congress. Southerners believed that the expansion of slavery into new territories would allow them to gain more political power, both through the addition of new slave states and the increased representation in Congress that would come with a larger population of enslaved people. Meanwhile, Northerners were concerned that the expansion of slavery would give too much power to the South and threaten the balance of power in the federal government. This conflict over the expansion of slavery was a major factor leading up to the Civil War.
What is interesting is that secession isn't a particularly Southern thing to do. Northerners had been threatening it in Jefferson's time, but Jefferson was able to deal with it before it got that bad.
It's true that secession is not unique to the Southern states. Throughout American history, there have been various threats of secession from both Northern and Southern states. One example of this is the Hartford Convention in 1814, where some New England states threatened to secede from the Union in the War of 1812. However, it's also true that secession was a key issue for the Southern states leading up to the Civil War. The idea of secession was seen as a way for Southern states to protect their interests, particularly with regards to slavery, and to assert their political power. Ultimately, this led to the formation of the Confederacy and the outbreak of the Civil War.
The reasoning for why Northerners wanted to break away had also to do with political power. They felt the South had too much of it.
I think you might have gotten it backwards. The Southern states were the ones that seceded from the Union, while the Northern states remained in the Union. It was the Southern states that felt they were losing political power and influence to the Northern states, especially after the election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860, who was seen as representing the interests of the North rather than the South. The issue of slavery played a significant role in this divide, as the Southern states were relying on slavery for their economy and feared that the North would try to abolish it.
No, I mean Northerners wanted to secede in Jefferson's time because of political power issues.
I apologize for my mistake earlier. To my knowledge, there were no significant calls for Northern secession during Thomas Jefferson's presidency. However, there were some Northern states that threatened secession during the War of 1812 due to their opposition to the war and the perceived dominance of Southern interests in the federal government. One example was the Hartford Convention in 1814, where representatives from 5 New England states gathered to discussed their grievances and proposed several constitutional amendments to address them. These included limiting the presidency to a single term and requiring a 2/3 vote in Congress for any declaration of war, as well as a provision to allow states to secede if they felt their rights were being violated. However, the end of the War of 1812 at the Victory of New Orleans undermined the convention's efforts, and the secession proposals were widely criticized and seen as unpatriotic.